I was 22 the summer we decided to escape into the wilderness one last time before life pulled us in different directions. 4 of us, me, Mike, Kelly, and Jay, drove 6 hours into the Oregon backwoods, following a trailhead none of us had ever seen on a map. No signal, no nearby rangers, just silence, pine, and miles of trees pressing in from all sides. It felt like we were the only people left in the world. At the time, that was the appeal. We set up camp near a small clearing as the sun dipped below the treetops. The night was what you'd expect. Crackling fire, the smell of burnt marshmallows, laughter floating into the canopy. It was perfect until it wasn't. Around 2 a.m., I woke up with a full bladder. The fire had died to glowing embers, the woods now hushed and thick with mist. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped the tent, and stepped into the cold. That's when I saw it, just beyond the fire pit, between 2 towering firs. Something was there, not moving, not hiding, just standing, watching. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline of a figure, darker than the night itself. My breath caught. I blinked. Gone. I stood frozen for what felt like minutes, ears straining. But there was only stillness. I told myself it was a shadow, a tree stump, something logical. I went back inside and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, I kept it to myself. But during breakfast, Kelly looked pale. She said she thought she heard someone walking around the tents last night. Heavy, deliberate steps. She even whispered that she'd held her breath, afraid to look outside. Mike laughed it off. Probably a bear sniffing for food, he said. But none of us laughed with him. That evening, the forest felt different, heavier, like it was listening. As the firelight flickered, we began hearing faint snaps in the woods. Not random, not like branches falling. It was rhythmic, measured, almost like footsteps, following a pattern. Mike, trying to be the brave one, stood and yelled, "All right, real funny, who's out there?" Silence. He swept his flashlight across the trees. That's when we saw them. Carvings, deep gashes into the bark. Primitive symbols, some spiral, others jagged, like runes. They weren't fresh, but they weren't old either. Jay said it looked like something out of a horror movie. I wasn't amused. That's when I saw it again. A figure, just at the edge of the light. Still, watching, exactly where it stood the night before. I opened my mouth to say something, but the moment I blinked, it was gone again. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. There were sounds, branches cracking, leaves shifting, something breathing close by. We didn't talk, just laid still in our tents, wide-eyed and waiting. In the morning, our cooler was overturned, food half buried in the dirt, and one of our tents, Jay's, had a long, jagged tear across it. Not claw marks. It looked deliberate. A slice. We didn't speak. We packed. We left. I thought it was over. But a week later, I saw a headline, "Mysterious Disappearances in Oregon Wilderness." Same forest, same area. Hikers vanished. Carvings found. One tree had a single word etched into it. Over and over, watching. I tried to forget. 2 months passed. Then I got a letter. No return address. No message. Just a photo. Of us. Around the fire. Taken from the tree line. I never believed in ghosts. Not really. I grew up hearing stories from my grandfather about spirits in the trees, voices that ride the wind, and old souls that never left the mountains. But I always brushed them off as folklore. Beautiful, haunting tales. Nothing more. Until last autumn. My girlfriend Lena and I were celebrating our 2-year anniversary. We decided to rent a secluded cabin in northern Montana, far from everything, just the 2 of us surrounded by forest and silence. The pictures online showed a charming A-frame with wide windows and a view of the valley. No neighbors for miles. No cell service. Exactly what we wanted. The first day was perfect. Crisp air, golden leaves. The fireplace crackling while we drank red wine and played old vinyl records. The wind blew through the trees like a soft lullaby. Peaceful, isolated, safe. But that night, things began to change. It started with the wind. Around 2 a.m., it picked up violently, rattling the windows, whistling to the cracks in the wooden frame. I got up to check, thinking maybe a storm was rolling in, but the sky was clear. No clouds, full moon. Still, the wind howled like it was angry. Then I heard it, a voice, soft, female, whispering. At first, I thought it was Lena talking in her sleep, but when I turned, she was wide awake, staring at me with the same confused expression. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, holding my breath. The whisper came again, faint, drawn out, like it was brushing against the cabin walls. "Let me in." I moved to the window and looked out. Nothing, just trees swaying and the moonlight casting long shadows. But I felt it, a presence, not just outside, all around. Lena grabbed my hand. "Let's go back to bed," she said quickly. Neither of us slept. The next morning, the woods felt different, like something had shifted. The birds were silent. The air was too still. As we walked a nearby trail, we noticed markings on the trees, small, crude stick figures carved into bark. Each one had a hole where the mouth should be, screaming silently. Lena didn't want to talk about it, but I could tell she was shaken. That night, the whispers returned. This time closer, clearer. They circled the cabin like wind spiraling around a drain. I pressed my ear to the wall and could swear I heard words. "He took her, buried her, she never left." I pulled Lena into the bedroom and locked the door. Even though we were alone, I felt ridiculous, but also terrified. At 3:13 a.m., we heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. We held our breath. The door creaked softly like something or someone was testing it. Then came the knock. 3 slow, hollow taps. We didn't move. Minutes passed. Then an unmistakable sound. A long, low whisper right outside the door. He lied. I flung the door open, flashlight raised. Nothing, but across the porch railing, written in the fog on the window glass, was a single word. "Listen." We packed and left at first light. I reported the incident to the rental agency, but they brushed it off. Said the last tenants complained of strange noises too, likely just wind and wildlife. But 2 weeks later, Lena found something tucked in her coat pocket, a small strip of paper, torn, yellowed. It looked old, scrawled in pencil with words. "She's still under the cabin. He never let her go." We called the police. They found bones beneath the crawl space. A woman, mid-30s, decades old. They don't know who she was, but I think she's the one who was whispering, and I think she's finally been heard. When I was a teenager, I lived in a small logging town in Oregon, surrounded by endless forest. It was a quiet place, too quiet, my friends use a joke. No movie theater, no mall, just trees, fog, and old stories people whispered when they thought no one was listening. One of those stories was about the Lost Trail. It wasn't on any map, but everyone knew someone who claimed they had seen it. Just once, usually by accident. The tale was always the same. You'd be walking in the woods, far from any marked path, and suddenly find yourself on a trail that shouldn't be there. Narrow, overgrown, lined with black stones. And if you followed it, you didn't come back. Of course, we never believed it. Not really. Until one summer evening, when my best friend Mark dared me to find it. We were both 16. Stupid, brave, reckless. The plan was simple. Hike into the woods past the old mill, past Dead Man's Hollow. Yeah, the name should have been a red flag. And keep going till we either found the trail or gave up trying. We left around 5 p.m. The air was thick with the smell of pine and something else, damp, moldy, like rotting leaves underwater. Birds chirp around us, but there were no squirrels, no deer. The deeper we went, the quieter it became. After an hour of hiking, the forest just changed. The trees grew closer together. The light dimmed like a storm was coming. Even though the sky was clear, that's when we saw it. A path, thin, almost hidden, but it was there. Black gravel, barely visible beneath moss and root. Just like the stories. Mark grinned, told you it was real. I didn't smile back. Something felt wrong. Still, we stepped onto the trail. Almost immediately, the forest behind us seemed to vanish, like it folded in on itself. I turned around, but the path we'd come from was gone. Only trees. Mark laughed it off. We'll just follow this a bit, then turn back. Easy. We walked for maybe 20 minutes. That's when we started hearing footsteps. Behind us, echoing ours. We stopped. The sound stopped too. We called out, nothing answered. But we weren't alone. A cold breeze blew through, and with it came a faint whisper. Not words, just breath, like someone exhaling right next to my ear. Mark looked pale. Let's turn around. We tried, but every direction led deeper into the woods. Every tree looked the same. No landmarks, no birds, no sound, just the trail leading forward. At one point, we found something hanging from a tree branch, an old backpack, moldy, torn. Inside, a shattered phone, a photograph half-faded, and a note. The handwriting was frantic. Don't follow the whistling. It's not wind. We heard it minutes later. A soft melodic whistle, rising and falling in a tune that didn't sound natural. It came from up ahead, then to the side, then behind. We ran. Branches clawed at our skin. The trees seemed to shift. I swear they were closer together than before, like they were watching. We reached a clearing just before nightfall. Dead silent. No wind. No moon. Mark collapsed. We're gonna die here. But I noticed something. On the ground, a spiral of black stones. And in the center, a hole. Just wide enough for a person to fit through. Or fall into. There were claw marks on the stones. That's when I heard the voice. Soft. Childlike. You're not supposed to leave. I turned. Nothing there. I dragged Mark to his feet and screamed at him to run. We crashed through the woods for what felt like hours. No trail, no direction, just terror. Somehow we made it back. The forest spat us out near the old mill. It was nearly dawn. Mark didn't speak for 3 days. When he finally did, he said, it was under the trees, watching us. We never spoke of it again. But here's the thing. That path, the black stones, they followed us. Every month, one appears near my doorstep. Just one, smooth, cold, whispering when I touch it. And last night, I heard the whistling again. It's getting closer. It was supposed to be just a simple camping trip. Nothing fancy. No big plans. Just me and my 2 closest friends, Mike and Sarah, escaping the buzz of city life for a weekend in the wilderness. We wanted to breathe fresh air, swim in a quiet lake, and sit by a campfire without the distraction of phones or responsibilities. After some research, we settled on a small, little-known campground near Lake Whispering Pines in Northern California. The reviews were sparse but positive, and the photos showed a pristine, secluded lake surrounded by tall pine trees. We arrived late Friday afternoon, the sun low and warm as it filtered through the branches. The air smelled like pine needles and earth, that fresh forest scent that always feels like a reset button for your mind. We found a flat clearing right by the water's edge. We pitched our tents in a triangle, gathered some firewood, and set up a small campfire pit. Mike was already prepping the grill. Sarah unpacked our food, and I was mostly just soaking all in the peacefulness, the sky turning orange and pink, the faint ripple of water lapping at the shore. We ate burgers and roasted marshmallows over the fire, telling stories and laughing at old memories. The only unusual thing was how quiet the night was. Usually you'd expect the sound of frogs croaking, insects buzzing, or maybe the hoot of an owl. But there was nothing, no background noise at all, just silence. When the fire died down, we crawled into our tents, feeling content and relaxed. Around midnight, I woke up. I don't know what made me open my eyes, but something felt off. The air was too still. No wind rustling through the trees. No animals moving. Then I heard it. Footsteps, crunching on dry leaves. Slow, deliberate, right outside our camp. My heart pounded and I froze. The sound circled around our tents, making a full loop. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped my tent just enough to peer out. The moon was bright and full, casting pale light on the forest floor. Just beyond the firelight's reach, at the edge of the trees, I saw something. A shadow, tall and thin, unnaturally still. It felt wrong, like it wasn't quite human. I blinked and it was gone. I backed inside the tent, zipped it up, and stayed awake the rest of the night, listening to the woods, my mind racing. The next morning, I tried to shake it off. I mentioned the footsteps to Mike and Sarah, but Mike just laughed. "You probably heard an animal," he said, "or maybe a raccoon messing around." Sarah said she thought she heard voices in the wind, but shrugged it off. Still, the silence around the lake continued. No birds, no insects, no rustling animals. We spent the day swimming and hiking around the lake. The scenery was beautiful, but there was something unnerving in the atmosphere, like the forest was holding its breath. As dusk fell, we built another fire, determined to enjoy the night. Then the whispers started. At first, they were just soft, carried on the breeze, hard to catch, but definitely there. I heard my name, Ethan. Mike and Sarah heard it too. Sarah said she thought she heard her own name whispered, almost like a warning. The voices grew louder, more urgent. They didn't come from any particular direction. They seemed to echo from the trees themselves. The fire flickered, and the temperature dropped suddenly. Then the lake responded. The surface rippled even though there was no wind. A low, eerie hum rose from the water, a sound like 1,000 whispered voices blending together. We sat frozen, staring into the dark water. Then I saw movement, shadows beneath the surface, shifting just out of reach. We tried to laugh it off, but none of us slept well that night. Around 3 a.m., Mike woke us. He said he saw figures moving through the trees, thin, elongated shapes that move without making a sound. No footsteps, just gliding. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the woods. Nothing, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The next morning, we found strange symbols etched into the trees around our campsite. Curved lines and spirals, like ancient markings. None of us recognized them. Mike joked that maybe Native Americans left warnings. But Sarah was visibly shaken. She said, "These aren't warnings. They're invitations." That day, we decided to hike the trail around the lake. It was narrow, twisting through dense forest, with patches of mist hanging low. The silence followed us. No birds, no insects. At one point, our compass started spinning wildly. We stopped. Mike swore the trail looped back on itself. but none of us recognized the surroundings. Every turn seemed to bring us back to the same spot, a large pine tree with a spiral carving. By late afternoon, we were exhausted and confused. We returned to camp to pack up, but when we got there, the fire pit was cold. Our tents had been disturbed. The food was scattered, and one tent had a long tear down the side. No footprints, no signs of animals. That night, the whispers turned into voices we could understand. We see you. Leave. Stay. The shadows crept closer to the campfire. We huddled together, terrified. We left first thing in the morning. Driving away, I kept looking back at the lake through the rear view mirror. The surface was perfectly still. Too still. Weeks later, I still hear the whispers of my dreams. I still see those shadows in the corner of my eye. And sometimes, late at night, I hear my name carried on the wind. The lake never forgets. And it's still watching. The town of Graybridge was the kind of place people passed through, but no one truly stayed. Nestled in the shadow of craggy hills and thick woods, its greatest mystery was Hollow Lake, a deep, dark body of water no one dared to explore. Local legend said the lake was a mirror to another world, a gateway to something lurking beneath. When Claire Morrison arrived in Graybridge on a late October afternoon, the autumn sun hung low behind the clouds, casting a cold amber light over the still waters. She was a journalist chasing stories, but this was different. She had come to investigate the strange disappearances linked to Hollow Lake. People who vanished without a trace, their last known location always near the water's edge. Claire's first night at the rundown and was restless. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows like the whispers of long-forgotten souls. The other guests kept their distance, casting uneasy glances her way when she asked about the lake. It's best not to go near it after dark, the innkeeper warned, her eyes dark with unspoken fear. Despite the warnings, Claire felt drawn to the lake's edge just as the sun disappeared. The surface of Hollow Lake was eerily calm, a perfect glass reflecting the twisted limbs of the surrounding trees and the ghostly moonlight. The air smelled faintly of decay and something metallic, like old blood, as she set up her camera to capture the lake at night. Claire noticed a figure on the opposite shore, a tall man in dark clothing, standing perfectly still. She raised her lens, but the figure vanished before she could take a shot. Heart pounding, she whispered to herself, "It's just the wind, just shadows." But then the water began to ripple, slowly at first, then in harsh, jerking waves as if something massive was moving just beneath the surface. The temperature dropped sharply, frost forming on the reeds by the shore. Claire's breath came out in visible puffs. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound emerged from the depths. It wasn't a call, not a word, more like a warning. Frozen. Claire stared into the black water, her mind racing with stories of drowned spirits and cursed waters. Over the next days, Claire interviewed locals, collecting fragmented stories about Hollow Lake. They spoke of strange lights beneath the surface, of voices calling their names, and a shadowy presence watching from the water's depths. One elderly man, his face carved with wrinkles like the bark of the old trees, told her about the mirror's curse. According to him, the lake was once a sacred site, a place where the veil between worlds was thin. Those who looked into its depths risked being pulled into another reality, one filled with torment and madness. Determined to uncover the truth, Claire ventured out during the day with her recorder and camera. She mapped the shoreline, finding strange symbols carved into rocks and trees, faint but unmistakable. Near one cluster of symbols, she spotted a half-buried, rusted locket. An old photograph inside showed a woman who looked exactly like her. Heart pounding, Claire realized the connection was deeper than she imagined. Claire held the locket in trembling hands, its cold metal biting into her skin. The photograph inside was yellowed with age, but the face was clear, a woman with haunting eyes, framed by dark curls. The resemblance to Claire was uncanny, as if staring at her own reflection in a time-worn mirror. A sudden chill swept over her, and for a moment, she thought she saw movement in the lake's still surface. The shadows along the shoreline twisted in whispers, faint, unintelligible, seemed to float on the breeze. Her thoughts raced. Who was this woman? And why had the locket been left here, almost as if it had been waiting for her? Determined to find answers, Claire returned to the town library, poring over old newspapers and town records. Her fingers traced headlines about disappearances, people vanishing near Hollow Lake across decades. Some stories mention a woman named Eliza Merrick, who had drowned in the lake over a century ago under mysterious circumstances. One entry caught her eye. Eliza had been accused of witchcraft, feared and shunned by the townsfolk, rumored to have cursed the lake before her death. That night, sleep evaded Claire. When exhaustion finally took hold, her dreams plunged her into a vivid nightmare. She found herself standing at the lake's edge, but everything was different. The water shimmered with an unnatural glow, and ghostly figures drifted just beneath the surface, their faces twisted in silent screams. Eliza Merrick appeared, her eyes black voids, reaching out to Claire with desperate urgency. "Help me!" Her voice was barely a whisper, carried on the wind. Suddenly, the water surged, pulling Claire in. She struggled, gasping for air, but the lake's cold embrace dragged her downward, into darkness deeper than night. Then, with a start, Claire awoke in her room, drenched in sweat. The line between dream and reality blurred. The following day, Claire confronted the innkeeper with her findings. The old woman's face paled. "You should leave," she said quietly. "The lake doesn't forgive. It takes what it wants. Those it feels belong to it. You're not the first to look for answers, and you won't be the last." Ignoring the warning, Claire felt more compelled than ever to uncover the truth. She prepared to explore the lake once more, this time equipped with a small boat and better gear. As she pushed off from the shore, the lake's surface was unnervingly calm. The surrounding trees whispered in the wind, shadows lengthening as the sun sank low. Claire's camera clicked steadily, capturing every detail. Midway across the lake, Claire's equipment suddenly malfunctioned. Her radio crackled with static. Her compass spun wildly. Then the boat lurched violently. Through the fog, a shape emerged, a figure beneath the water, pale and featureless, drifting slowly just below the surface. It reached out, a hand breaking through the glassy water, fingers like twisted branches. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She tried to back away, but the boat wouldn't move. The water rippled unnaturally, pulling her closer. The lake began to glow faintly from below, revealing countless faces pressed against the underside. Mouths open in silent screams, eyes pleading. In that moment, Claire realized a true horror. The lake was alive. It fed on memories, on souls trapped between worlds. With a burst of adrenaline, Claire grabbed an oar and struck the water, breaking free. The boat rocked violently as the presence recoiled. She rowed frantically toward shore, the faces fading beneath the ripples. When she reached the bank, she collapsed, gasping, heart hammering. The locket, still clutched in her hand, felt impossibly warm. Inside, the photograph had changed. Eliza's eyes were now deep red, staring accusingly. Claire understood the truth. Eliza's spirit had been trapped here, bound by hatred and sorrow. And now, by finding the locket, Claire had linked her fate to the lake's dark history.